Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing, an inside look at foster care and adoption needs in Connecticut. My name is Jacqueline Ford. It is my hope that each week I can help to dispel those myths and misconceptions that often act as barriers to finding homes for Connecticut children. Joining me in the studio today are two representatives from the Department of Children and Families. We have Matt Dimitrian and Anne-Marie Stonaha, as well as Vanessa Williams from the Connecticut Alliance of Foster and Adoptive Families. Thank you all for joining me today. From what I understand in the research that I've done, there are over 4,000 children in out-of-home care due to issues of abuse or neglect. So to me, that would mean that we need more foster and adoptive families. Matt, can you tell us what is foster care?
Okay, foster care is temporary care of a child that the state provides when a child is removed from their family.
Okay, and how old are the children in care?
Our age range is from birth to 18. So sometimes we take any age, and we provide homes at any age and any level.
So from the hospital to being in high school, senior in high school, we provide services.
Correct.
And are there certain requirements or assessments that families would need to adhere to be considered as a foster or adoptive parent? Right.
To be a foster home, you have to be fully licensed, comprehensive evaluation of your home and your ability to take care of children. We assess the home for any safety concerns. We have regulations. They have to be in compliance with those. The foster parent has to be 21 years of age, have stable income, be in good medical and physical and mental health, and just be able to provide for a child on a daily basis.
Can a family rent their home, or do they have to?
Right, you don't have to own a home, you just have to have a stable home. It could be an apartment, it could be a condo, it could be a multi-level home, but it has to be stable so that there's no issues where a child would have to be removed.
And what about pets? Can a family have pets of their own?
You can have pets. You can have pools. You can have weapons, but they all have to meet our requirements.
Permits
correct. And we do a comprehensive background check on each prospective foster parent, state and local checks, DCF checks, sex offender checks, DMV checks. Criminal, judicial. So there's a gamut of assessments on each foster family.
So in order to be considered as a foster parent or an adoptive parent, do you have to have experience having your own children?
No.
No, so people who've never had children can be considered.
Correct.
And what about sexual orientation?
No, there's no criteria against that. We license all sorts of people, all sorts of homes. And there's really, as long as you meet the requirements per our regulations, then there's no, we don't rule anybody out. Okay,
that's great. That's great to know. Are there mandatory trainings that the families have to participate in order to be considered?
Currently, we do a TIPS MAPS training. It's a minimum of 13 weeks. Foster parents are expected to attend, fully comply with the training, build their assessment of their home and their family. And in some regions, we go a few additional weeks just if there's a topic or an issue that needs to be addressed with that certain group.
How long is the training typically, did you say?
13 weeks, minimum of 13 weeks.
And is it a week's worth of training or once in a week?
It's once a week.
Once a week.
Once a week. And we do variations of it. We do certain days, certain times to accommodate the needs of that group to make it easier for them to get into the office and to do it.
And if there is a two-adult family, husband, wife, two gay partners, lesbian partners, they both have to participate in the training?
They both have to participate in the training. They both have to be on the license.
Okay. Okay. What about, does DCF provide any incentives to families to foster?
Yes. A child is placed in DCF care and into a foster home. The medical insurance is fully covered by the state. The dental is covered by the state, so there's no costs to the foster parent. They wouldn't be required to pay for a medical procedure or a dental procedure. We do reimbursement, financial reimbursement monthly to cover the costs of a child in their home.
So really, there's no out-of-cost.
There's no out-of-cost. There's no cost to do the training, to sign up. There's never a cost to the parents, and there's not a cost when their child is in their home and the care is being provided.
Wow, that's great. And how long would you say a child stays in foster care?
That all depends on the specific situation of each child and their family and their parents. When a child comes into the care, the department's #1 priority is to reunify that child with their family. We have concerted efforts that we go for a period of time, and so we know for sure if that child can or can't go home. If they can't go home, unfortunately, we come up with a longer plan, a permanency plan to meet their needs on a long-term basis, and necessarily going home, but being with another family on a permanent long-term basis. Adoption or transfer of guardianship, something like that.
Can you tell a little bit about the relationship that the child has with their birth family while they're in foster care?
While they're in foster care, we like to, with the expectation that they're going to go home. So we want to keep that relationship strong. So birth parents are given the opportunity to be a part of their child's life, to share information with the foster parent about the child's needs, likes and dislikes, so to make it an easier transition for the child. And if appropriate, parents are, allowed to be a part of that.
Okay. So if a child can't go home,
yes,
and they can't be reunified to their birth family, what's the next step?
The next step is to assess them, depending on their age and situation, for long-term care, i.e. an adoption, or we do what's called a transfer of guardianship to the foster family, and just try to make their situation permanent, wherever they're living permanent. Unfortunately, they can't go home, but what's the next best thing? To be with a family that's going to commit to them long-term, get them through high school, get them into college, and make sure they have a healthy and productive life.
So permanency is definitely a goal of the agency.
Correct.
Anne-Marie, so for adoption, is the training and the expectations for a family interested in adopting one of Connecticut children the same as in foster care?
The training is exactly the same. The kids are exactly the same. The only difference is when a family is choosing to foster a child, they're electing to do temporary care. Our parents that adopt through DCF are more interested in the long term. They're looking for children for whom they will be able to someday adopt after the legal process has finished in the court system.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about DCF's adoption. Do you consider DCF an adoption agency?
So interestingly enough, DCF is the largest adoption agency in the state of Connecticut. On average, we do about 500 adoptions a year. All of the children are coming through the child welfare system. So it's very different than a private agency. So all of our children, like Matt mentioned, they're birth to 18. They're children that come right out of the hospital, all the way up to kids that are in high school, or in foster care. And foster families sometimes just want to do temporary care. It's a moment of time in their life. They just want to do this for a period of time, and then they want to move on to retirement and happy stuff. So the adoptive parents that we have work with the agency, just like Matt was saying, which is they go through the training. They are involved with biological parents and their care of the kids. They have contact. The parents that are choosing to adopt usually fall under a category called legal risk adoption. So we place kids in out-of-home care who can't safely stay in their biological family's care. So we look for relatives. That's our first goal. If they can't stay with biological family, then we're looking for that non-related family. So in the case of a family who's choosing to do legal risk adoption, they're actually fostering with the intent to adopt. So in a sense, they are foster care providers. So a private agency adoption is one where a biological parent voluntarily consents to their child being placed out of their home. And so the roles and the time frames are very, very different for that type of a placement. In the DCF placement, it could take up to a year, possibly longer, depending on the circumstances of the child and what's happening with the biological parents. Because while that family is fostering, we continue to work with the biological parents to help them fix the conditions in their home. And when they can't, and the child is going to be legally free for adoption, we don't want to have to move them. So we want to find families as early as possible for kids so that they can stay where they are and they don't have disrupted, connections. So, we say that there's about 500 a year, and it's very difficult to delineate, is that a foster family who really only wanted to do temporary care, or is that a legal risk adoptive family? But for the most part, it's about 500 a year. So that's a lot.
500, that is a lot.
Yeah.
So from what I'm understanding and speaking to the two of you, in foster care, the goal is reunification. Right. And in adoption, the goal is permanency.
Correct.
And when a child can't be returned home and that foster parent does have an opportunity to adopt them if the situation is going well, and if that doesn't happen, then a child is into the adoption realm. And can you talk a little bit about that match with the families? You know, how do you find a family in your list of waiting families?
So what happens is after the area office, like Matt is in, licenses a family, all of the information is sent to our central office, which is located in Hartford, to me at the Permanency Resource Exchange, and I place the family on the adoption registry. And then anytime a area office statewide worker needs a placement, a match for a legal risk adoptive family, they'll contact me and I do what's called a paper match. So if somebody in Matt's office called and said, I have a 2-year-old African-American baby boy, I would look on the registry for a family who's willing to take an African-American baby boy. And there's a lot of other things that go into it. We have families who struggle with domestic violence issues, mental health concerns, and substance abuse. So an adoptive family or a pre-adoptive family can be pretty prescriptive when they're talking about what they're comfortable in accepting into their home. There are families that will say that they're only able to care for an infant for whatever reason. They may have a 2-year-old of their own that they want their child to remain as the oldest, in which case they will take an infant to a 2-year-old. So families can be pretty confident, pretty prescriptive with regard to the type of child they wish to parent. Once I've done that paper match, if you will, the area office will select out, they read all the studies. And I'm backing up a little bit, when Matt was talking about the 13+ week training, after the training there's a home study component that is completed by DCF. And that's the home study that the area offices will read to get a sense of who the family is and their ability to care for the child. And when they're reading and reviewing those studies, they're actually reviewing it to see, can this family care for this child well into adulthood? So using myself as an example, I'm a Caucasian female. And if I chose to be on the registry to adopt an African-American male, I would have to, in my study, say, how am I going to do that? Never having grown up as an African-American male, how am I going to meet that child's needs? So in the circumstance of temporary foster care, we have an emergency, we need somebody right away. And in legal risk, it's now we're looking for somebody who's going to care for that child into adulthood. So can you meet their needs today, tomorrow, and 10 years from now? So once the area office has read all their studies, they have a meeting called a permanency placement team meeting in the office, and they select the best matched family for a child. And then that family, we go through the process of sharing information about the child, and if the family thinks it's a great match, then we go forward. If the family doesn't think it's a great match, then we look for another family. So there's a lot of detail that happens, but there's a lot of family input. A legal risk family will know everything that we know about a child's history. If the mother had struggled with substance abuse during the pregnancy, we would be able to share with them the substance that the mother used, as long as we know it. There's a lot of circumstances where perhaps we may not know absolutely everything, but the point is that we share what we know. It's not in our or any child's best interest to hide information or gloss over information. We want families to know everything they need to know in order to be comfortable with the match.
And is there any cost associated with adopting a child through DCF?
There's no, so just like foster care, there's absolutely no financial cost. There's an emotional cost though. And families would need to be prepared for that, because there's no guarantee that any placement will result in an adoption. Although we include the families, we let them know what our legal standing is, we let them know what the concerns are. There are moments that families, biological families, do what they need to do to happily get their children back. And so, you know, adoptive families or pre-adoptive families need to understand that there are no guarantees. And legal risk adoption is wonderful for children. It's wonderful that they don't have to go from foster home to foster home. It's wonderful that they grow up in the family where they could, or they live in the family where they could grow up. But it's an emotional toll on the legal risk families if that child gets reunified. And what we talk to our adoptive families about is, in order for you to be successful, somebody else has to fail. And that's really sad. And we don't want families to fail. And that's why we try right from Jump Street to do what we can to help families fix their circumstances so they can safely parent their children.
Okay, thank you for that. And real quick, before we move on to Vanessa, are there any incentives offered to families who do adopt?
We have lots of incentives. Much like Matt mentioned, we do have the financial and medical subsidy that stays with the child into adoption, provided the child meets one of these 7 criteria for reimbursement for special needs adoption. Almost all of our children do qualify for that. In addition to the financial subsidy, which stays until the child is 18, the medical subsidy stays with the child until the child is 21. In addition to that, any child adopted after 2004 in the state of Connecticut will qualify for a college benefit.
That's wonderful.
It's an amazing benefit, and you know, we're so appreciative of the legislature for supporting that, because it helps us break down barriers for older children adoptions or for families to adopt. And currently that's the rate of the Yukon in-state cost, and kids don't have to go to a 4-year college. They can go to a 2-year technical.
That's wonderful. And Vanessa, now in learning about foster care and adoption, if someone listening, if one of the viewers is interested in taking that step to be assessed, to learn more about our program, what can they do?
They can give Kid Hero a call at 888-543-4376. Our office hours are 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. Someone will take their call. They're going to ask some basic information, name, address, phone number, and then we will look for an open house in their area and get them signed up.
And where are open houses held?
Open houses are generally held at the area DCF offices or in the community.
That's great. And are they held during the day, nights, weekends?
They are held either in the morning, in the evenings, after 5:30, or on Saturdays.
Perfect. And then after the open house is completed and the family has learned all that they need to know in order to take the second step, what happens next?
Our office, the Kid Hero line, will give them a call back to find out if they have any additional questions. We will inquire whether they filled out their application at the open house and turned it in. And if they need any help, our line is open for them. They can call us back.
Wonderful. Well, we've covered a lot of information, and I think that we've given our viewers, all the information that they need to take the next step in the process. So thank you all for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us today. Okay, so as we end today's show, I'm going to have you meet Jemiah, who is a child in our care who needs a forever home.
My name is Jemiah. I like being around people. I love hugs. I'm very huggable. I'm not that type of person who's mad or all the time or sad, and if I am, it's likely I'm going to tell you. You just can tell by my face. I'm not really good at hiding things. I just don't like the feeling of being by myself sometimes. But most of the time I love to be happy. I like to do a lot of things. I like to sing. I like to draw. I like to do gymnastics and cheerleading. I like to go outside. I have a lot of things I like. School, I love math and reading. I like science sometimes. I When I grow up, I either want to be a vet or a singer. Told me not to cry when you were gone. My love for singing came from my mother. She used to sing to me when I was a baby. As I got older, I guess I remember her voice. So singing is the closest I can be to my mom. So that's what my love for singing came from. I think I would like siblings. I feel like we can just sit down and play games if everybody's willing to do it. Or if everybody's willing to go out to a park, I feel that we can go to a park or go to the movies or something that we can all join in on. I don't care what culture or skin color you are. I just want to be in a family that I know I'm safe in and that loves me and cares for me. I think that's all that matters to me.